Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on Know the Therapist. My name is Jennifer Chalo, and I'm a counseling psychologist. My guest today is Wambua. She's a clinical psychologist, and she's telling us about the work she does and how she does it and why she does it. So join us. Tell a friend to join the sessions that we have a bazillion people viewing. And yeah, let's get started. Grab a drink, grab a notebook and a pen. You might hear something that that interests you. You might have a question for Mercy. You can drop it on the comment section, and Mercy will answer it before we end the live. So yeah, Mercy, welcome to the session. Please tell us your name and what you do and what kind of training you have in the work that you do.
Okay, so my name is Nicole. I'm a clinical psychologist. By profession, I'm a trauma and debriefing specialist. I'll explain what that means. So I hold a BA in psychology from Kenyatta University and MA in clinical psychology from USIU. So I've done this for the past, this is my 4th year, like I said earlier. So what it means by being a trauma and debriefing specialist is that that's my niche, you know. I deal a lot with, just childhood trauma, situational trauma from accidents, violent relationships, anything that would be traumatic. And this is not limited to what we may call extreme trauma, because we all have different capacities to deal with situations. So what may be traumatic to one individual may not be to another. But generally, that's what I do. I also just have like training in inclusive leadership and diversity, because I realize that in the world that we're in right now, I get a lot of clients who ask, what if my religion is, what if my identity, and you notice that some of them would feel very locked out, because it's like, first of all, there are certain things they're struggling with at their core, and then there's other now mental stressors coming from, just discrimination. So I thought that would be important. So that's what I do in an yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for clarifying that. My question on top of that is, you said that you specialize in trauma. What I know about many counselors, about many mental health professionals, especially in the beginning, is that they struggle to find a niche. They struggle to find something to focus on because the problems are so many. There are so many clients to see. Yeah, sometimes there's no structure to know exactly where you're supposed to be leaning on. How did you end up knowing that trauma was the thing you wanted to do?
When you do psychology in general, it's what many people do. That's why you see that people who are probably a psychology minor or major with something else. So it's basically just understanding human mind and behavior. So I came to realize that a lot of the disorders that present, especially in therapy, in one way or another are embedded in some form of trauma. Now, people wonder why when you go to therapy, if you came in because probably you can't sleep, your therapist tells you or asks you to explain what growing up was like. And it's like, how is that related to what I'm doing,
Yeah.
But it's from that background that you realize that a lot of these things are as a result of a traumatic event, one way or another, especially what we call like advanced childhood experiences. If you grew up in a home where a parent, both of them were using drugs, for instance, it then affects how they relate with you and how they perform their parental duties. So that lack of one aspect then would affect you in future, So many times home becomes, or it forms a blueprint from which you see life through. And so I realized that lack of something or an excess in another thing could also, just be traumatic in experience. So that's what I felt like. There's absolutely no one in the world, 7 billion of us, who can outrightly come out and say they have not been traumatized in one way or another. And that is why it's important, even just for other therapists, to be trauma informed. It may not be in the extremes of PTSD, but even just small snippets are important, just to have like some training in. So I realized that because that's at the core, then it's a plus. It's a plus when you have that on top of any other that you would have. And now just explaining to an individual to see how these things may have shaped the things that they're experiencing currently yeah, I think that's why I decided to move towards that direction.
Oh, okay. So for you, this was more of a strategy that you applied because you could see where you wanted your career to go more than just let me just get another qualification.
Yes.
Ah, okay, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. In the 4 years that you've been working as a trauma therapist, I'm assuming the entire time you've been doing trauma therapy, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. What kind of what can you say that your clients have taught you in that time, in that 4 years time, and being a trauma therapist, that you believe you would definitely not know if it was not for these clients? They have opened your eyes to this one thing. What would that be? And I'm sure there are many things, but maybe just want to pick out the stands out along across many clients. What would that be?
One word: universality. I tell all my clients that when you're going through a difficult situation, it's very easy for you to convince yourself that it's only you, and that no one else is probably experiencing. Of course, the extent to which everyone is experiencing is affected by many things, personalities, like your environment and the like. But just knowing that these things are common among everyone. Even for me as a therapist, some of the things that I would probably have gone through earlier on and didn't understand, then it makes me feel like, oh, so we are all just human, no one is living in a different universe. There's nothing new really under the sun. It may present differently, but we are all dealing with one thing or another that's similar. And what that has given me is hope, and that same hope that I transfer to my clients. Many times when they come, like, I'm broken, something is wrong with me, and I'm like, you're not broken. Like, if I was to call one out of probably 10 people outside here have somewhat experienced either directly or indirectly what you're going through. And so just
Yeah.
that helps them exhale and let them know that it's not all doom. It does get better. And then also, another thing is diversity in terms of like how different we all are as people. You meet one client today, you think, oh, this is probably all I need. Another one comes and it's just like, wow, I did not think about this like that. And it's just always a challenge, And I appreciate just the meeting different people, because it also become very accommodative. It helps. I make fun with my clients. I tell them, if you met me prior to starting like my psychology journey, you'd be shocked. Me, I'm the person who'd go to an event and sit to call at the exit, closer to leave once it's done.
Yeah.
But somehow in my personality change because of the line of work that I'm in. You have to be very empathetic. You have to be very open to hearing certain things probably you did not think existed, or some things that you had said, never. And they say never say never. In this profession, you hear things and see stuff, So it just makes
Yeah.
you more open. Things don't show you up as much. That's what I'd say I've learned.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing, especially on the aspect of the universality. I think the one thing that mental health issues can keep lying to us is that we are the only ones. So when you're struggling with depression, you're like, I'm the only one. The world is falling on me. There's no hope. There's nothing. But then you step outside and you find out, oh, there are other people who have actually gone through the same thing. There are actually people who are going through the same thing right now, and maybe in the next 5 minutes, somebody else is going to go through the same thing. So that universality of our human condition, of our suffering, is that we are not alone. And I think it also helps us develop a bit more self-compassion, knowing that we are not alone, knowing that whatever we are struggling with, we are not the only ones. Even when we make mistakes, we are not the biggest mistake makers in the world. Other people have gone through similar things. I think that is quite important. Yeah, that's amazing. Before we carry on, I want to recognize our audience. I want to recognize Jacqueline. Jacqueline is here. Wanjiru, Kemi, Njoki Munene, Kemi again, Nick Kimuli, Cheryl, Flora Flo, Dreaded, Georges Nyachai, BF. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Sorry. Fancy one. Oh, B Fancy one. Yes, and Onesie. And Julie Moas. Thank you so much, guys, for coming through. If you have any question for Mercy, or if you have any questions about mental health in general, you can put them in the comment section, and Mercy will answer them before we leave this this session. So thank you so much. Stick around and tell a friend to join. Moving on to a different angle of this entire thing, having worked with for 4 years in this field, what populations do you work with? What kind of people do you work with? I know now that you said you do trauma therapy, so I'm assuming the work is specifically trauma, but what age groups do you work with?
Interestingly enough, I've worked with children, young adolescents, I've worked with young adults and middle adults. So
Okay.
I wouldn't say specific like a child therapist or an adult therapist. I work with a wide range of individuals. Like I said, because trauma isn't, it doesn't occur within a specific age group, you know. So
yeah.
like I said, people who come from homes where like their upbringing was traumatic. There are people who come from healthy homes but then end up experiencing other things along the way that are. So I work with a wide variety of individuals.
Okay, that's fantastic. I want to get a bit personal and find out from you how, first of all, how did you end up becoming a therapist? Like, you could be anything in the world, but somehow you ended up becoming a therapist. What is the story behind that? More details, the better.
Well, interesting enough, like therapy, or rather being a psychologist, was not on my mind growing up. I never once sat and thought like I want to be a psychologist. So when I finished high school, I'd wanted to do much of anything that was neuro based. So I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. Yeah. So then after high school, of course, you realize, this is grades. And then my dad was like, no, there's no way I'm paying for parallel. No. Like,
Yeah.
so I said, okay, fine. Let me look for something else within that space of study the mind. And I ended up in psychology, just say, let me try. If it's not working, it's not working. Like I wouldn't do it. But then I realized there's more. I feel like the impact is more when you can talk to someone who can respond, as opposed to being in a theater room and operating on a brain of someone who cannot have communication with you. And so when I ended up in that class, of course, the first benefit was just realizing who you are and how much baggage you carry, as a person. And I felt like it was good for me first, but then also just the anatomy of the brain. It's so interesting to see how parts of your brain control how men are different from women. When you have like a mental illness, what part of your brain is affected, how drugs now attach to certain parts of your brain and fix that, And so when I left now my undergraduate, I wanted to be a child therapist. Again, like I've said, I've always gone through life believing that we probably have sick, and I say sick in quotes, sick adults because we had sick children. And so I felt to troubleshoot, we'd rather start with children and have like the foundational years taken care of so that we do not have people who are struggling as adults. But then I realized, first of all, in Kenya, we don't have that. There's no provision for that to be like there's no degree for child psychology. But then I said, I think that also would have limited me, because if you introduce yourself as a child therapist, it's like adults are like, I don't think you're the person for me, So I said, okay, fine, clinical psychology. And what stood out for me the most was just, like I've said, the brain anatomy, like understanding how human brains work. And once you get to that space, you even stop trying to make sense of why people behave the way they do. Because if my brain in itself can be copied to, yours, Jennifer, like we can't be the same person. And just looking at how so many things come into play, like your genetics, even you, if you have siblings, you're in no way like the same, So just studying that and looking at how events in your life affect your brain, your nervous system, how it's wired to go off in the event that you saw a lion, but for some people it just never goes off, and so even just a cat or a picture of a lion scares them, so just understanding how human beings operate in totality has been an interesting journey. And so would I pick another career path? No, I don't think so. What I think is that with psychology, it can be integrated into every other sphere in the career space. You know, I feel like a secretary would benefit from just psychology knowledge. I feel like HR would, you know. So if Jennifer comes to me and her performance is low, I'd want to find out what's happening outside of work instead of just like, you know, your KPIs are not being met, you know. So I feel like anyone who interacts with human beings would benefit from some level of just understanding how people behave. I think it would make us more empathetic. It would make interactions more fruitful, you know, instead of it always coming from a place of competition. Because even just the way we've learned in life, it's like survival for the fittest. So we are always trying to amass everything around us, you know, well, it's not necessary sometimes. So yeah, that's how it's been for me.
That's fantastic. I like that transition where you knew what you wanted to do, and then suddenly you found the other thing that became the thing you want to do for the long term. And most people never find that thing. And I'm happy for you that you found it. I'm happy that I found it. Most people don't get to find it. So I'm really glad that you stumbled upon it the time that you did. That is amazing. So you do this work right now. You do the work of a therapist as a trauma therapist. There's a lot of stuff that you see. There's a lot of stuff that you experience. Things you can never talk about because I keep saying that in the therapy room, there's a lot of intimacy that can never be shared. You are with a client talking about things they've never told anybody in their entire life, things they will never tell anybody else in their entire lives. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those things are sad. Those things are disturbing. Sometimes those things are just out of this world. And it's very, most people ask you, how do you do this work? How can you sit there and listen to people's problems? Uchokangi, you know, there's those questions that come up. But that always drives me to ask counselors in general and mental health professionals in general, why do you do the work that you do? Yes, there's how you stumbled upon it, there's how you ended up doing it, but why? You could stop at any minute, but then you keep going every day. You keep going to those painful stories, those personal stories. So for you, Mercy, why do you do the work that you do? What's your why?
Just another one word, impact. Like, I'll take it back to what I said. In as much as if I would have ended up being a neurosurgeon, there's impact, yes. There's the, you know, just the healing that this person would experience. There's also the downside. You could lose this patient, you know. And so I think just the therapy or being a therapist allows you to see the transformation. It's not a one-off thing, like I saw you today, operated on your brain, probably would have a review once or twice, that's it, you're gone. I feel like with this, it allows you to see the transformation. Sometimes it can get very overwhelming, where you feel like you're hitting a wall and starting again. It's like, this is probably session 5, 6, and something we had addressed in session 2, someone else comes and tells you, but they may think everything has gone out the window. Like, I can't remember anything that you said. I don't think these things are working for me, you know, but also just coming to the end of it, and it's like, this person tells you, I did not imagine that I could get out of that space. You know, I did not think that it was possible to transform into someone else or into something else and achieve ABCD. And so for that, I don't think I would trade it for anything. You know, just the impact and seeing people living lives free and realizing their potential and living their dreams. Because I tell people many times we are chasing after things with the hope that it would fill some emptiness within us, not because it will give you fulfillment. You know, you hear people making fun. It's like, oh, I'd rather have money. I'd rather be rich and sad and go and cry in Dubai, you know. But it's like some of these things, instead of like having an almost permanent solution to that sadness, then make money and actually go and enjoy instead of it being like an escape. So just allowing people to see how your mind is your biggest enemy. In real sense, like I tell people, if Jennifer, you said something mean to me, it's not what you said that gets me upset. It's my interpretation of that. That is why we all go through similar situations sometimes, and our interpretations are very different. There are people who just never see anything serious in anything. And you wonder, like, why are you so happy all the time? And it's because, like, I just choose not to dwell there. And someone else will say something, even from the best point of view, and they'll still be upset for a very long time. So just impact, allowing people to see how you as a person are stopping yourself from achieving what it is that you want. And I think with that, I get out of bed every day, even on days when I feel I have a client who asked me, there are no days you don't feel like coming for therapy. You don't feel like you don't want to see like clients. And I'm like, in all honesty, I don't think I've gotten there. Where it's just like, today I don't feel like doing this work, you know. And I think maybe that's why they say when you do something you enjoy, you never have to work a day in your life, because it never feels like a responsibility. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That is amazing. I am so happy for you being in a place where you never wake up mornings and go like, I do not want to see clients. And that means I want to believe that means that you've not reached a point of burnout. You've not reached a point of hating your job, which is usually a very bad place for most people. And it means I want to believe that is a sign of you being pro in self-care, because the only way you don't burn out is if you practice your self-care on a daily basis. So I'm assuming you're a pro in self-care. And as you go to you telling us the proness and how you do it, let me recognize some more of our audience. We have Julie Mwas, Wanjiru Njue is here, official Lioness Becky, and Maury Samuel, Fidel Dollar, Director Josh, Wanjakush, Ken Asero, Gladys, Annie, and Chill Shots. Thank you guys for coming through. If you have any questions for Mercy, if you have any questions about mental health in general, if you have any questions about trauma, Mercy is the expert. Please put them in the comments, then Mercy will respond to them. How do you practice self-care? What is your self-care routine that we can borrow so that we maintain that good place where every day is a joy and we have more happy days than sad days? How do you do that for you, and what can you teach us?
What I think I do is just allow balance. You know, sometimes you can be obsessed with what we would call like toxic positivism, where you feel like you have to be on a high all the time. And when there's like a low moment, it's just like, oh, now see, I'm broken and I'm going back into that dark space. But I think balance is key. Like me, sometimes when I'm feeling upset or sad, I just feel it. There's no running away from it. Like I feel it. If I need to sleep, I will sleep. If I need ice cream, I'll have ice cream. But now the game changer is, how long are you allowing yourself to stay in that space? You know? So of course, with other things in place, what you're eating, your diet, your connections with people, are you meeting friends? Are you meeting, you know, like what does the workplace look like for you? Are you able to tell like work is becoming a bit too much, I need to take a break? Are you able to say no to certain opportunities that you know would, you know, take you into a bad space? So for me, it's just balance. On the days when it's hard, but then I get ways to pull myself out of it, you know. Therapy as well, you know, it's usually like, you're talking to us, who are you talking to, you know? But there's absolutely no way you cannot be seeing someone as well, just to process. And I think that what is the most important thing is to notice when you have certain triggers. Because sometimes we pull ourselves out of a space, but then keep the door open. This could look different. It could be with friendships, it could be with relationships, it could be with family, it could be with yourself, where you say, oh, I will not do this again. Tomorrow or the next day, you're back there. And it's just like, oh, well, this is the pit that I am very comfortable with. I'd rather stay here. So I think it looks different for everyone. You need to find something that works for you. I know music works for me. Like if I could blast music and dance, by the time I'm done, I somewhat do not remember what it is that was really stressing me out. For other people, it could look different. There are people who like the sound of water, you know. There are people who prefer to just be out and not do anything. You know, there are people who prefer just to sit and probably stare into space, and it works for them. There are people who, depending on your personality, having friends around is what would work for you. So I'd say it's a journey of learning what works and banking on that. Now, the danger would be wanting to copy another person's self-care routine, which will not work for you. If someone else is able to do like a morning skincare, evening skincare, go to the gym, go to gym for yoga wear, have massages every day, if you can't do it and you get onto it, you end up more frustrated than you initially were. So what I'd say is there's no one size fits all. You get to know yourself and see what works for you and avoid the things that do not work for you.
I think that's a fantastic answer, especially on the part that we're saying no one size fits all. Because if you try other people's things and they don't work for you, then you're likely going to start going like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. Maybe I am the problem. But then it's because you've not taken the time to learn yourself and to know what really works for you and what doesn't. So I think, yeah, and I think most things when it comes to mental health, the answer is always it depends on the situation, it depends on the person. There's not usually, we don't work with concrete answers. So I think it's important, know what works for you, know your thing, then stick to it. The thing that you can do often without excuses, that's the thing that works best. So I think that's a good one. That's a really good one. What is your personal experience with mental health issues, if that is something you're comfortable sharing? This is coming from a place where most people don't understand that mental health professionals are human beings, and some mental health professionals have gone through crazy stuff. They have gone through so much in their own mental health journeys, and that can be a shocking experience for clients who are like, "What? You mean you also get depressed?" And they're like, "Hey, how come? See, I thought you know everything, and you went to school and you've learned these things. How come
Yeah.
you know?" So what for you is your mental health experience with your? The question is, what is your experience with mental health? Your personal experience? Sorry, yeah. So what is that like? If you're comfortable to share it.
Interestingly enough, sometimes when you go through, or rather, if your life has looked a certain way for a long period of time, you think it's normal.
Yeah.
So there were days I realized that I couldn't calm myself down. It somewhat feels like your mind is constantly running. It feels like you're very tense. Your stomach feels like there's a lot of water. And this was a really long time ago, until I realized that this isn't, especially now after getting into therapy for myself, and then until you realize that this is not normal. Being on edge all the time is not normal. It probably has been your norm for a long period of time, but it isn't normal. So of course I have struggled with anxiety, not as a disorder, because I think many times when we mention these things, it's just like automatically it's gone to that extreme of now you need medication, you're a sick person. I have struggled with anxiety. I've had days where I don't feel like doing anything. I feel so sad. I feel like I just want to sleep my life away. And of course, you do get out of it, yeah. So I think what has helped with that is what we've discussed earlier, having a self-care routine and noticing when things are getting out of hand. Like, it's normal to have like one bad day. Probably things just didn't go well, But if you notice that tomorrow, again, you don't want to get out of bed, the next day taking a shower is hard, then that tells you that something is off. So I think it's important for people to be aware when stuff is probably getting out of hand. But of course, yes, I have experienced it. And maybe just to say something about like this also with personal therapy. I remember when personal therapy was like a requirement for my clinical psychology like master's degree. You had to have 25 hours. Yeah. So initially when it's mentioned to you like at the very beginning, I remember many people thinking, this is just a requirement. You go into that therapy space thinking I do not have any issues. But interestingly enough for me, I was very intentional. I knew, I'm aware that there's this. Remember, I told you when I first joined like BA, it was more of, oh, so you mean that is not normal? You mean that I shouldn't be feeling like that? And so I knew I had a list of things. I said, I'm not going to waste these 25 hours at tea. By the time it's session 20 is when I'm thinking, oh, but though I think I have a problem. I was like, I have a list of things that I know that need to be addressed. And so that has helped me to constantly call myself out even when I'm doing stuff that is leading to the deterioration of my mental health, as well as pat my back when I'm able to do something. You know, when they tell you like when you're doing exercises and it's like good job. You know, I used to find that so weird until I decided to just practice it myself. It's like you've gotten one thing done, like appreciate yourself. You've gotten a task completed. It's not a big deal for other people, but it is for you, you know. That way your brain learns to take in even just rewards and compliments in whatever way that would look like. Because I know, especially within our African setup, like parents, it's not always like, oh, Jennifer, well done. It somewhat always feels like if you're not number one, something is wrong. And or if you're not on your best behavior, something is wrong with you as a child. And what that teaches you is conditional acceptance and love, you know, where it's just like I always have to be at 100 to feel like I'm a good person. But it's just like all these things make you up, you know. How you're living today, you wouldn't have known. You haven't done this before. I keep saying that no one has a manual where if today is not working out, you refer to page 50 and check I don't know where and how you're going to troubleshoot this, you know. So with that in mind, then you need to be very gracious with yourself, you know. When things are hard, you acknowledge that they're hard, but then also come up with ways to get out of that space.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience. This is my attempt at normalizing mental health issues among mental health professionals, because I realize there's a lot of shame and taboo and stigma around mental health professionals not having their ducks in a row. You're expected to know what to do, handle your problems, do not struggle, do not show you're struggling, because how can you be struggling and be able to help people? But then I always fall back on Carl Jung, we are wounded healers, and that is my firm belief that we're wounded healers and we need help. And when we get help, when it's okay to seek help and to accept it when it is given. I also like that you mentioned your experience with personal therapy. I There's a hill I'm willing to die on, and that is the hill that every mental health professional needs to go for therapy. It's not that I don't trust them, but mental health professionals who have not gone for personal therapy, there's a thing I don't get, and I'm not shaming anybody who is out there who is a mental health professional who has not gotten therapy, but I'm telling you that you should consider it. If not for anything else, even if you think you don't have problems, it is okay to go and just have the experience of what your clients experience when they client sit. It's good to know what it feels like to be a client in a mental health setting. I think that is a very important teachable moment for for mental health professionals. So thank you for sharing your personal experience with mental health and also your personal experience with therapy. I think that is very, very helpful. To shift gears from personal stuff and get to somewhere else in this live, and before we even go on, let me say hi to Gladys Munderu, who says, hey, Mercy. So they're saying hi to you. There is Wamboxi, who has joined us. There is official Lioness Becky, says that just to say I am so proud of how far she has come. That is you, Mercy. And wishing her grace in this path she chose. No questions for now. Thank you, Becky. Wamboxi says, I agree with the trigger part. So I think it's the point where you talked about knowing your triggers and being keeping an eye on them. Brown is here with us. Masmo is here with us. Ella and Mobile Mosio. I don't know how to pronounce that name. You people have difficult names, but thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, comments, or anything you'd like to say to Mercy, or anything you'd like to talk about mental health, trauma, this is the place, this is the time. Drop it in the comment section. So, shifting gears to something entirely different, and this is about training as a mental health professional. You've been in school for, I'm going to call it 6 years minimum for most counselors. So that's your undergraduates and something to do with your masters. So I'm combining that to give it a minimum of around 6 years. So being in school for 6 years, you get to learn a lot as a counselor, as a mental health professional. You're taught a bazillion things. But then you arrive on the ground and you find that things are different. What was your vitu kwa ground at different moments when you started practicing 4 years ago?
What I'd say is I learned to somewhat be very open-minded, you know. not having too many expectations. But what I know I struggled with was when a client initially would go like, I want to take a break, or like they miss one session, and it's like, what? Are you telling me I don't know what I'm doing? Like, so this person doesn't want to see me. I am not a good therapist, But I later came to know that even no matter how good of a therapist you are, the biggest chunk of what will I call it? The work needs to be the client's. Even if you have like, I don't know, education from here to where, you have worked for how many years, if the client doesn't do their work, there's really nowhere you're going to go. Yeah. So with that being said, I learned to come into therapy sessions without expectations. Another thing was just coming to the acceptance that healing will not be linear. Like I told you, sometimes when you go towards the end and you think you've gotten everything under control, something you did look at the beginning, someone tells you, now I think I've regressed. And it's just like you learn to not snap and feel like, oh my gosh, we are not making progress to now this is it. This is what healing looks like. Because I think the other thing now with clients, when you go into therapy, somehow you're very motivated. You're very motivated to do this, and you do session 1, 2, 3. In fact, I usually tell clients, if you make it past session 4, you're going to stick through it. Because this is where you're being asked those questions about spaces you've not gone into in a long time. So if you make it past that, you will not want to drop out. Yeah. So just allowing myself to know that it's not always going to be, oh, I'm making progress. Some days it's just going to be like, this past 2, 3 weeks have been difficult. I did not manage to breathe, to do the breathing exercises even once. I did not manage to eat even vegetables. I've just been on junk food. And I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. But you see now, what are you doing about that? Yeah. So I learned to manage my expectations. I know that it's not dependent on me. No matter how good I may think I am, it's very dependent on how much effort they put and the decision that they make to try and make the situation better for themselves. Yeah.
I think that is a very, very important point, especially for beginner therapists, because we keep thinking that, I think, in my opinion, when we think that therapy is not progressing fast enough, or the client is not healing fast enough, the client is not making the progress I thought they would make by this time. Most of the time, those milestones are things we have set for ourselves as therapists. They are not the milestones that the client is going with. And so at that point, you find that as a therapist, you're meeting your own needs. You're not serving your clients. At that point, you're telling yourself, if this client meets this, hits these milestones in this duration of time, I am going to benchmark my worth as a therapist on those milestones. And that is a problematic thing. And I think also because as a beginner therapist, there's this desire to see success. You want to see success very fast, very early on, so that you can feel, yeah, I know my thing. By the way, they really trained me. They really taught me how to do this work. So I think this is a call out to a call to action for therapists in general, especially those in the beginning. Do not benchmark your worth and your success depending on the client's progress. The client's progress is the client's progress, and your progress is your progress, and your worth is not dependent on the client's progress. Those are two things to detach and to remove your emotions from it completely. Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe
Thank you so much, Masi. Yes, please.
Like you've said, it's also important for you just to assess why your ego feels the need to be rewarded back. It's important for you to check why does it matter to me so much how many clients have gone, how many clients have not regressed. So you need to check that, because that is an indication that something could be amiss with you as a therapist, and you need to work on that, so that also you're checking your worth on just like job, just like with any other job. You don't want to feel like I'm not worthy of ABC because I'm not performing very well at work. Just being grounded in who you are as yourself, and knowing that you're giving it without that constant wanting someone to tell you, oh, good job, you're doing a really good job. And that session was good, you know. Some days, me just tell clients, some days you leave here crying or probably feeling worse than you came in, but it's not because it wasn't a good session, but because you've had to also be honest with yourself. You know, and that's the hardest thing to do. It's hard to say, Jennifer, you know, like that routine that you have started of going to bed at 3 a.m. is not good for you. Because now see how you wake up very grumpy, you're struggling with anxiety, and so how can I make that better? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is on point 100%. The ego thing can be very. Do you think, here's my theory, that the reason we as mental health professionals, we have that ego that needs to be stroked often, and we peg our worth most of the time on the client's progress, is because we work in isolation and nobody gets to see us in action. You know, they don't get to see us applying that intervention, talking to that client, helping the client stop crying. You know, people don't get to see that. You do that in privacy with you and your clients. And so you're thinking, if they cannot see me in action, then they should see me having clients who are progressing so that I can prove I'm actually good enough. Do you think my theory is correct?
Oh, yes, because you realize that even when you check on articles that have explained where employees get their satisfaction from, is the recognition that they get. So if you want your business to flourish, you have to ensure that your employees are constantly either getting bonuses or rewards, those things for employee of the month or what. Those things really serve to improve motivation. And especially as mental health professionals, like not unless you're employed, if you're in private practice, no one sees you, you're saying. It's just you and the client and go home, you know.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're wondering, but is this client going to give good reviews? Somewhat have a website where people give reviews about your services, and so that's why I'm saying that need to be reminded that you're doing a good job. Be that person for yourself, you know, be that person for yourself, and assess that in terms of like where you are, say, what you've managed to change, you know, because I think also there's that notion that mental health professionals have it all together, you know, but also sometimes some disclosure is good just to let your client know that, look, I'm not coming from a place, I'm not on a high horse. Like, I'm not telling you to do ABCD because at me every day I wake up and run 5 km and drink my coffee and water and what. There are days that I also struggle, you know, and you being okay with that means that you're also open to working on yourself. Yeah, that's why it's also important to pull out. I think you said something really, really good about, especially psychologists who don't go through personal therapy. There's a very high risk of countertransference, you know, where if you do not deal with something and someone comes and says one word that reminds you of your nursery school teacher, you're bound to react, you know. So if you do not check on yourself as well, you start to see now those effects in therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. That's 100% true. And thank you so much for sharing it and for putting it out there. I think many more therapists need to hear these open conversations about the things that happen in the therapy room. So thank you so much for sharing that. We are coming very close to the end of this conversation, and I have just a few questions left. And one of them is that is it the day before yesterday? Is it the 10th? It was World Mental Health Day. Yes, and there's a lot of stuff to do with awareness on mental health and all this good stuff. What do you wish more Kenyans knew about mental health? And considering it was just celebrated the other day, what is your message about mental health to Kenyans?
What I'd say, the first thing is, I know probably people have heard this a lot, but just to reiterate that mental health does not equate mental illness. Like, mental health like occurs along a spectrum, you know. Like some days you're balanced, some days you're closer to being healthy, some days you're closer to mental illness, and that's life, you know. So when we speak about that, let it not be automatic that someone thinks like it means mental illness, because even like WHO said, like it's not entirely the absence of like an illness, you know. Like of course you could not be, you probably wouldn't meet the criteria for depression or for PTSD, but you probably just need someone to help you make sense of certain things, you know. Sometimes even just talking to someone, like there's such healing that comes from talking to someone. and especially someone who will not be imposing values on you, trying to get you solutions, because again, if you find a therapist that tells you, Jennifer, go do ABCD, red flag, because if it doesn't work, then I come and say, Jennifer told me, it's like I'm already discrediting you. So sometimes just the talk to help you make sense of certain things, doesn't necessarily mean that now you're struggling, your childhood was difficult, your relationships are falling apart, So just taking that up and realizing that it's important. The same way you would not have a lump, probably now this being like breast cancer awareness month, as a lady or even a man, and you feel a lump in your, just armpit, and it say, I'll sit it out. You see that you panic. And it's like, I really want to see a doctor. Yeah. Or sometimes it's just like, okay, fine. You remember those chats we had in nursery? Is it nursery or primary school when you're told you need to visit the dentist, I don't know, twice a year, brush your teeth twice a day? And it's like when you leave that school, that information is gone. Like you don't remember to do these things. But the same way you like run to a doctor just for mental health for physical health checkups, I think mental health checkups are important. When you go to the doctor just for a checkup, you're not going there hoping that, oh, I hope I have like kidney failure. But it could be caught. It could be caught early on in advance. Yeah. Same thing with like just a check-in. You probably didn't think something was an issue, and it may not necessarily be an issue now, but if it's not addressed, it could lead to something else. So just being open to having this conversation without labeling people, without making people look like, oh, your life is falling apart, and you're going through that. Just being open to that. And yeah, so that's what I'd say, like be open to that conversation and seek this help. And I know the services can be very expensive, but there are people who are offering these services for cheaper rates. There are a lot of organizations and just people who are open to offering some of this information free. Like if, for instance, today what you're doing, someone else may decide, since it's mental health awareness, let me bring a therapist, let them talk to us about how to manage anxiety. Do you know that is free therapy? That is actually free therapy. Yeah. If you go to someone else who charge you for that kind of information. So even just consuming like positive content around like mental health and being very open to that conversation.
Yeah, I think that is quite important. And speaking of service providers, there are so many. First of all, there's so many people who are offering free services for anybody who does not have access to, does not have the finances to get therapy. We have Redcross have a hotline number that you can call. At NACADA, I think they have mental health services. Kenyatta has mental health services for under 25s, I think for free or very small fee. Matari Hospital has mental health services. I think every major public hospital has a mental health wing where you can talk to somebody. So don't say that the reason you're not seeking mental health services is because you don't have the money or you don't know where to find them. Start with the ones that I've just mentioned, and go. If you go to a public hospital, you will find somebody, and from there you can get guidance on other people. And also being the first person to share mental health content. If you're listening right now, be the first person in your WhatsApp group to share mental health content. Be the first person in your family group to share mental health content, because not everybody knows about these things. Not everybody is aware about mental health. So be the first person to share mental health content around. Know that the counselors are there, and even what you're doing right here at Infinity Wellness is with this show that you do, Know the Therapist. We are trying to stop this thing where people say our counselors wako wapi, well, these mental health professionals wanapatikana wapi. We are here. That's why we are doing this show, so that you can meet many mental health professionals. You can listen to them as they speak. You can understand what they do, how they do it, and then you can see if you want to connect with them to work with them. So don't struggle in silence. Don't suffer in silence. The services are very much available. Now that we've just spoken about the availability of the services, mental health services, what mental health resources would you recommend to our viewers and the people who are listening to this right now, people who listen to it later? What mental health resources do you recommend to them that they can check out, they can get connected to for those days when they don't have the chance to go see a therapist? Maybe they don't have the opportunity or the time or the access. What would that be?
What I'd say, especially that I'm very big on right now is social media. There's a lot of resources that you'd get off of social media. Like there's a group of individuals that I interacted with not too long ago. It's called Doctors Live. So Doctors Live is a mobile app. They're on Instagram as well. People could check them out. They have an app. They have an app where you get like teletherapy. So teletherapy is where like you talk to a psychologist, either via call or a voice call or a video call. They also have like resources on meditation and just things that you could incorporate if you do not want to talk to someone per se. Why I say these things are important now is because I know there's still that thing where you don't want people to know that you're seeing a therapist. So you don't want to you walk into a building and you go to room 101 and room 101 is known that that's where like therapists are. So a lot of these services are available via like apps. I know there's HealthX Africa as well that has like they have a, I don't know if it's, how much do they pay for per year? I think I should find out. But they have that provision where you can get like, once you get that subscription, you get like, you see a medical doctor, you see a therapist. So there's different organizations that offer this kind of services at subsidized rates. There's also Chiramo Hospital Group. They have a lot of, just what I think what they call mindful Mondays. Yeah, they have mindful Mondays where they talk about different things. Yeah, sometimes you may not think that the issue that you have is actually an issue, but if you had someone explaining, then it would be a step for you to know that I need to seek help. So even just these Twitter spaces that people have, I'm part of a coalition that is very big on creating awareness. It's called Action for Preventive Mental Health. So we do a lot of webinars and just like community engagement, so for just to commemorate some of these days, suicide awareness, just mental health month and the likes.
Sorry, I got disconnected. Somebody called my phone. You are saying that you have action for implementing mental health. Please pick it up from there.
Yes, so I was just saying, like, I'm part of this coalition that is very big on, just community engagement and addressing like social injustices, which are very big on affecting like mental health, just like petty crimes when people are incriminated for this, especially like the very touchy topic on suicide and it being criminal, is that the best way to go about it? But these people need help. They do not need to be put in prison. So there's this things that there's different organizations, like I said, that deal with this. I also mentioned like holistic psychology on Instagram. They do a very good job on just showing you how certain things manifest, how childhood trauma probably could affect your communication pattern, how it could affect how you form relationships with friends or with intimate partners. So there's a lot of information out there. There's also Rixpoet, Onyango Otieno. He's well known for, just Afro-masculinity and mental health around like men, which I think is very important because it's the men that struggle a lot with coming out with mental health issues. So yeah, those are a few of the resources plus what you had mentioned with Kenyatta and, just other mental health or other hospitals that do have this departments within their institutions. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those resources, and I will be adding them to the description box of this video so that everybody can access them. We intend to distribute this information as widely as we can, so we'll be adding all those suggestions, all those resources into the into the description box, and I really appreciate that you give us specific things that we can go to, we can check out. And I agree with you about the social media. I think social media has its place now. We can always access this information. It's widely accessible to almost everybody. So thank you so much. We are getting to the very end of this Live's video, and I've really enjoyed listening to you speak about mental health and psychology and yourself as well. I've gotten to know you a bit more. I'm sure our audience has also gotten to know you a bit more, and that is something that we truly appreciate. Thank you for your openness and for welcoming us into your life. How would people easily reach you if they are looking to work with you? So probably somebody's listening and they're like, I want Mercy to be my therapist for the next X number of weeks, months. How would people easily reach you?
So they could mail me. My email address is mercywambua42@gmail.com, or they could call me on 011-134-0053. So maybe just to say that again. So it would be 011-340-0. Yeah.
Okay. And the email address? The email address was
mercywambua42@gmail.
Sorry, Mercy Wambua 43. Mercy Wambua 43.
42.
42
at Gmail.
Okay, great. I got that. Yes. Okay, fantastic. That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your contact information. Let me take this moment to give a big shout out to all our audience members, guys who have graced us with their time. I know you could be anywhere in the world, but you chose to join us on this live video, and we really appreciate your time. Let me see if somebody has said anything. I can see Kemi says this is a great chat. Good job. Keep doing what you are doing. So thank you so much, Kemi. We are come to the end of this live session. I want to thank you, Mercy, for the work that you're doing and for being one of the great mental health professionals that are out there. Thank you for putting yourself where you are in that position to make sure that we are all doing well mentally, and especially what you said in the very beginning, that you want to be at the very beginning where things happen, which is childhood, knowing that many sick adults are because of a sick childhood, and you are there to help with those problems. So thank you so much for being in the forefront. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for putting yourself in our live video today. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your story. I appreciate your presence. With that said, I would like to end this live video. I don't know if you have any final parting shots, something you'd like to say before we end the live.
I'm just grateful for the platform to and let people know that it's sort of one bad day does not equate a bad life. And you do not need to give up on yourself. Like I began by saying, there's universality, there's this. The problems are common. The manifestation is different. Yeah, but there's